Welcome to Silent Screams, where darkness, whispers, and terror await you. Are you ready to confront your fears? Story 1, The Curse of Marianne. The day Lily found the antique doll at a quaint roadside shop, she felt an unexplainable pull toward it. The doll was exquisite, with porcelain skin, emerald green glass eyes, and auburn curls that cascaded down its back. Its delicate dress was lacy, worn yet elegant, whispering of a bygone era. The name Marianne was inscribed on a brass plate attached to its stand. Lily, a collector of vintage toys, couldn't resist. The shopkeeper, an elderly woman with a nervous demeanor, warned her. This doll is different. Strange things tend to happen around it. Lily laughed it off, attributing the warning to an attempt at theatrics to raise the price. She purchased the doll, oblivious to the darkness she was inviting into her life. Lily placed Marianne on the mantelpiece in her living room, proud of her find. That night, she heard faint giggles echoing through the house. Brushing it off as her imagination, she went to bed. Over the next few days, small disturbances began to occur. Objects moved from their places. The radio turned on by itself, always playing a static-laced lullaby. Lily's cat, Luna, hissed at the doll, refusing to enter the room. One evening, Lily returned from work to find Marianne sitting on the couch instead of the mantelpiece. Her heart raced. But she rationalized it, maybe I moved it and forgot. However, as the days passed, the doll's position seemed to change on its own. Sometimes it was on the dining table, other times near the staircase. Its glassy eyes seemed to follow Lily wherever she went. Disturbed, Lily decided to research the doll's origins. She returned to the shop, but it had mysteriously shut down. Determined, she scoured online forums about haunted antiques and stumbled upon a post on a paranormal blog. A photo of Marianne appeared with the caption, "Cursed doll sold at auction in 1935 after a family tragedy." The article detailed a chilling story. The doll belonged to a little girl named Margaret in the 1920s. After Marianne came into Margaret's possession, the girl's family experienced a series of misfortunes, illness, accidents, and eventually a fire that claimed their lives. The doll, unharmed by the flames, was found sitting amidst the ashes, her dress pristine. Horrified, Lily tried to rid herself of the doll. She threw it into the trash. But the next morning, Marianne was back on the mantelpiece, her dress spotless, her glass eyes gleaming with malice. The disturbances became violent. Doors slammed shut on their own. Lights flickered. Lily began waking up with scratches on her arms. She would often find messages scrawled in soot on her mirrors, "Play with me." Luna, her faithful cat, vanished one night, leaving behind only a trail of fur leading to the doll. Lily sobbed as she searched the house. But Luna was gone. Lily reached out to a paranormal investigator, a man named Carter. He arrived with equipment and a grave expression. As he set up cameras and EMF detectors, he muttered, "This doll isn't just haunted, it's a vessel for something malevolent." During the investigation, Carter asked Lily to leave the room while he attempted to communicate with the spirit. Moments later, a blood-curdling scream echoed through the house. Lily rushed back to find Carter slumped against the wall, eyes wide with terror, his hair streaked with white. "She's ancient," he whispered. "Older than the doll itself. She feeds on fear." Lily decided she had to destroy Marianne. She doused the doll in gasoline and set it ablaze in her backyard. The flames roared, consuming the delicate porcelain. For a moment, Lily felt relief. But when she returned to the house, Marianne was waiting on the mantelpiece, untouched. Her eyes seemed brighter, her smile more sinister. Desperate, Lily contacted a local medium, an elderly woman named Agnes. Agnes arrived and immediately sensed the dark energy emanating from Marianne. "This entity has bound itself to you," Agnes said grimly. "You can't simply destroy the doll, you must sever the connection." A séance was conducted that night. Candles flickered as Agnes chanted incantations in a forgotten language. The air grew cold, and a guttural voice emanated from Marianne. "She is mine. You cannot take her from me." The candles blew out, and chaos erupted. Lily was thrown across the room. Shadows danced along the walls, their laughter chilling her to the bone. Agnes collapsed, clutching her chest, her face pale, summoning her last ounce of courage. Lily grabbed Marianne and hurled the doll into the fireplace. This time, she recited the incantations Agnes had whispered to her. The doll shrieked, a horrifying, inhuman sound, as the flames consumed it. The house fell silent. Weeks passed. Lily sold the house and moved far away, hoping to leave the horrors behind. Life returned to normal, though she often felt as if she were being watched. One day, a package arrived at her doorstep. There was no return address. Inside was a doll, porcelain skin, emerald green eyes, and auburn curls. The brass plate read, "Marianne." Lily screamed as the lights in her new home began to flicker. Story 2, The Curse of Eloise, the Haunted Doll. It was a gloomy autumn afternoon when Clara wandered into the dusty little auction house on the outskirts of town. An avid collector of vintage items, she sought something special, a centerpiece for her growing collection of antique curiosities. The dim lighting and stale air of the place only heightened the allure of its many treasures. But one object stood out almost immediately, a porcelain doll. The doll was exquisite yet unsettling. Its glassy blue eyes seemed to follow Clara as she moved, and its pale, perfect complexion gleamed eerily under the dim light. The doll's dress was an elaborate, lace-trimmed gown in shades of faded blue and cream, and a delicate gold locket hung around its neck. "She's called Eloise," the auctioneer said with a slight tremor in his voice. "Been in storage for decades. Folks say she's odd. But if you like her, she's yours for a bargain." Clara felt an inexplicable pull. Despite a gnawing unease in the pit of her stomach, she bought Eloise and brought her home. Clara placed Eloise in her study, on a shelf among her other antiques. For the first few days, nothing unusual happened. But then came the whispers. At first, Clara dismissed the faint murmurs as her imagination or the creaking of her old house. But the sounds grew more distinct, a soft voice, as if someone were speaking in the next room. When Clara investigated, she found nothing. Objects in the study began to move. A book she was sure she'd left on the desk was now on the floor. A clock stopped working at exactly 3:33 a.m. every night. And always, Eloise seemed to be watching. Her gaze, fixed and lifeless, somehow felt alive. One night, Clara awoke to the sound of giggling. It was faint but chilling. She got up, clutching a flashlight, and crept into the study. There, Eloise sat, her head tilted slightly, as if mocking her, determined to learn more about the doll. Clara researched its origins. She discovered that Eloise had once belonged to a wealthy family in the early 1900s. The youngest daughter, Lillian, had adored the doll. But tragedy struck when Lillian died suddenly under mysterious circumstances. Rumors spread that Eloise was cursed. Clara decided to open the tiny locket around Eloise's neck. Inside, she found a faded photograph of a little girl, presumably Lillian, and a lock of blonde hair. As soon as she touched the locket, a chill ran through her, and the room seemed to darken. That night, Clara dreamt of a shadowy figure standing at the foot of her bed, whispering in a voice that sounded like a child's, "She's mine. Don't take her away." When she woke, the locket was back around Eloise's neck, though Clara distinctly remembered leaving it on her nightstand. Clara confided in her friend Megan, a skeptic who dismissed the strange occurrences as stress-induced delusions. Megan agreed to spend the night at Clara's house to prove there was nothing to fear. As the night wore on, Megan's bravado began to waver. The giggling returned, louder this time, and the temperature in the study plummeted. The sound of tiny footsteps echoed through the house. Suddenly, the study door slammed shut. When Clara and Megan finally managed to force it open, they found Eloise sitting in the center of the room, surrounded by a circle of melted candle wax that neither of them had placed there. Megan fled, vowing never to return. Determined to rid herself of Eloise, Clara decided to burn the doll. She drove to a secluded clearing in the woods and lit a bonfire. As the flames roared, she threw Eloise into the fire. For a moment, it seemed to work. But then, the flames turned blue, and a piercing scream erupted from the fire. Clara stumbled back in horror as the flames extinguished themselves, leaving Eloise untouched in the ashes. From that night on, the hauntings intensified. Doors slammed shut on their own. Lights flickered, and Clara began to see shadows darting just out of sight. The doll no longer stayed in the study. Clara would find it in different places, in her bedroom, on the kitchen table, or sitting on the stairs. Clara sought the help of a medium, who immediately sensed a dark presence. "The spirit bound to this doll is malevolent," the medium said. "It won't stop until it consumes you. You must return it to where it came from." With the medium's guidance, Clara discovered that Eloise had been buried with Lillian in a small cemetery just outside of town. That night, Clara dug up the grave and placed Eloise inside the coffin. As she began to cover the grave, a violent wind swept through the cemetery, and the ground trembled. Clara heard Lillian's voice, angry and despairing, "You can't leave me. I'll find you." But as she finished the burial, the wind stopped, and an eerie calm settled over the graveyard. 4 weeks. Clara's house was quiet. The whispers and footsteps ceased, and Eloise did not return. Clara began to believe she was free of the doll's curse. But one morning, she awoke to find a faint, childlike handprint on the fogged-up mirror in her bathroom. Beneath it were 3 words scrawled in dripping water. "I am here." Story 3, The Curse of Evelyn's Doll. In a quaint, cobblestone town hidden from the bustle of the modern world, there was a toy shop with a reputation for making the most beautiful dolls. The shopkeeper, a frail old man named Mr. Elric, was a reclusive dollmaker with a secret: his creations were not entirely of his own design. For years, whispers swirled about his peculiar ability to create dolls so lifelike they seemed to watch you, their porcelain faces unervingly expressive. Mr. Elric's most infamous creation, however, was Evelyn's doll. Commissioned by a grieving mother who had lost her daughter. The doll bore an uncanny resemblance to the child. What no one knew was that Mr. Elric had gone too far. Pouring more than his craftsmanship into the doll. He had summoned something dark. Binding an unspeakable force to it. Shortly after the doll was delivered, the mother vanished. And the doll returned to the shop. Mr. Elric refused to sell it again. Locking it away in a dusty cabinet and warning his apprentice to leave it untouched. But secrets never stay buried. And curses are never content to remain idle. Years later, after Mr. Elric's death, the shop was liquidated. Among the inventory was Evelyn's doll. Still locked in its cabinet. It caught the eye of a collector. A woman named Charlotte Lane. She had a taste for the macabre. A blog chronicling her peculiar finds. And an unshakable curiosity. The doll was exquisite, its emerald eyes glimmered unervingly in the light. And its painted smile seemed to shift. Ever so slightly. Depending on the angle. Charlotte was captivated. And she paid a small fortune to bring it home. Her readers devoured her blog post about the acquisition. But amidst the praise and intrigue, there were warnings. One comment read, "You've invited her into your home. You can't send her back." Another cryptically stated, "Don't call her Evelyn. That's not her name anymore." Charlotte dismissed the comments as internet drama and proudly displayed the doll in her study. At first, it was a conversation piece, sparking intrigue among visitors. But soon, strange occurrences began to unfold. Late at night, Charlotte would hear soft whispers emanating from the study. At first, she thought it was the wind. But the sounds became more distinct, words she couldn't quite make out. Spoken in a child's voice. One night, her cat, Luna, hissed at the doll. Its fur standing on end. The animal refused to enter the room after that. Charlotte laughed nervously, brushing it off as feline eccentricity. But deep down, unease began to creep in. The whispers grew louder. And objects in the room started to shift. A pen she distinctly remembered placing on her desk was found on the floor, pointing directly at the doll. Books fell from shelves in the middle of the night, their spines broken as though tossed with force. One evening, while reviewing her blog comments, she saw a new one, "She's watching you now. Run." Determined to get to the bottom of the mystery, Charlotte dove into the doll's history. She scoured old records, eventually uncovering Mr. Elric's diary, hidden in a box of the shop's remnants. The entries painted a horrifying picture. Mr. Elric admitted to binding the soul of a grieving spirit to the doll. The spirit, he wrote, was not the innocent girl her mother had lost but something else that had answered his call. It had manipulated him, promising him fame and fortune in exchange for a vessel. Over time, Mr. Elric realized his mistake, as the doll began to exhibit malevolence, tormenting him and driving him into seclusion. Charlotte's hands trembled as she read the final entry, "She cannot be destroyed. Fire will not take her. She returns, always waiting for a new keeper. Whoever you are, if you find this, do not keep her. She will consume you, as she consumed me." By now, Charlotte was desperate to rid herself of the doll. She tried selling it, but buyers mysteriously backed out at the last minute. She attempted to donate it, but no one would take it. Finally, she resolved to burn it. She built a fire in her backyard and threw the doll into the flames. For a moment, she thought it was over. But as the fire roared, she heard a piercing scream, inhuman, guttural, and filled with rage. The flames flickered, turned a sickly green, and then extinguished themselves. The doll lay unscathed in the ashes, its painted smile now a malevolent grin. That night, Charlotte woke to the sound of footsteps in her hallway. Gripping a flashlight, she crept toward the noise, only to find the doll sitting on her kitchen counter, its head tilted. Its emerald eyes seemed to glow in the darkness. She tried to run, but her legs froze. The doll moved. It wasn't much, a slight turn of the head, a faint crackle of porcelain, but it was enough. The whispers returned, now clearer than ever. "Stay with me," they said. "Forever." Weeks later, Charlotte's blog went silent. Concerned followers speculated about her disappearance. Some claimed to have seen the doll on online auction sites, its eerie description unmistakable. Others swore they heard whispers when they scrolled through her old posts. The doll always finds a new keeper. Perhaps it's waiting for you.